Oops, adjusting the camera there. Hi, guys. Welcome to Average Guy Opinions. I'm your average guy, John Corelli. This is episode 143, I think. Kind of got a little bit behind. I had a very full last week of work. I've been busy with comedy. I've been really busy with my father, trying to get him into a nursing home because my stepmother has sold their house. There, I'm going to get into that in another episode, probably the next one even, but I'll get into that can of worms later. But that's what's been occupying my time. I've also been trying to spend a lot of time with my kids because COVID's been hard on them and they don't get to see their friends. So I'm pretty much my kid's best friend right now. A lot of things going on. However, what I wanted to discuss on this episode was reparations for people. For I'm gonna just say black people because I think African American, that term has soured, especially with the advent of Trump supporters, especially using it because they want to be protected when they talk about black people because a lot of them are racists. It's really an irony that's pretty funny to me. It's like I saw a lot of people that were pro-Trump but anti-Biden, and saying, "Well, Biden signed in that crappy legislation, that terrible crime bill back in the '90s that really demonized African Americans," and I'm like, "You don't give a shit about African Americans. If you did, you wouldn't be saying all lives matter. Now stop with your bullshit. Yeah, that was a terrible crime bill, but you didn't think it was terrible when it got signed in the '90s. Now that supposedly, what is Trump, some sort of champion of black people's rights? Are you kidding me? It was just such a bait and switch and such an easy argument to defeat. But yeah, so I say black. Even when it came out, at least the first time I ever saw African American or heard about it was pretty much the late '80s, and I actually had a few black friends back then. I still do. Many of them are still the same friends. So I asked my black friends, I go, is it okay if I use African American? I mean, if I use black and don't say African American? Yeah, that's no problem with me and you. I was like, okay, because, and then I did a joke on it. I said, hey, if I got to call you African American, you got to call me European American. And that takes one more syllable to say than African American. So white man still wins. Ha ha ha. But so that's my argument for just, we're keeping it simple, right? Now, this is not a simple thing that we're talking about. Reparations for, I would assume, descendants of slaves. So first you'd have to prove that, right? Secondly, how much money? We've got about 40 million black people living in this country. And most of them could lay claim to that money, but many of them can't. Many of them are not descendants of slaves and therefore did not have this country built upon their backs or the backs of their forebears. So it's a big, I don't know, there's a lot of logistical cans of worms within this. In my heart, absolutely. Should we deconstruct these billion-dollar corporations and maybe make the billionaires just multimillionaires, like barely live on that, and give money to people that need it, especially black folks who are definitely, discriminated against not only by the police but also by the workforce of this country and in every other form you can think of. I've seen it happen at every level. Been around a while. Having said that, is it logistically realistic? So the guy, where this whole argument came about, a guy put it on Facebook. Cool dude, white comic from I almost said Nebraska, from Kansas. His name's Aaron Hahn, Hahn. I suggest you follow him because he's funny, but he's also a smart dude. He's in his 30s. He's a nice guy, and he's funny dude. And but he put out this post basically saying, black people should get reparations. I agree with that in theory. Now, and so I ended up not really arguing too much, but because I don't Facebook argue, I put out my points. I may argue my points a little bit, but once it devolves, like it almost always does, into either condescension or straight up threatening or name calling, I'm just out of there. Life's too short. But so my thought on the subject was, hey, by the way, if it echoes in here, I'm really sorry. I don't know what happened. I took a couple posters off the wall and brought them into my room, and Logan hasn't replaced them. So it's like nothing is here to absorb my noise. Sorry. So back to what I was saying. As far as my solution was to give free education, free higher education. And that would have to be backed up, obviously, by affirmative action in the workplace. Because one woman said, hey, you can give us all the education you want for free. If we can't use it at the next level due to discrimination, it's useless to us. And I was like, you're right. That would have to be backed up by strong affirmative action legislation. And of course, the, how do I want to put it? I can't think of words. That would have to be backed up lawfully and forcefully, possibly. Almost like in the 50s when Ruby Bridges and what was it, the Little Rock Nine had to go to school, and the National Guard had to be called in. Hopefully that wouldn't need to happen, but oops, I'm dropping stuff off my kid's bookshelf. I'm a mess today, guys. Can you tell? So that's where some of the arguments came in. I really wanted to talk about an amount, how much. We just had stimulus checks over the past 12 to 18 months in this country for most of its citizens. What is, and that was what let's say it averaged a few thousand for each of us, right? Over those 3 checks. How much would we give people? It'd have to be a lot more than that, would it not? And so I said, hey, let's do the math. A lot of people are thinking this stimulus is not a good idea, that it economically would kick us in the balls. Having said that, I think our economy is stupid. I think it needs to change. And you guys have probably seen me comment on this before, that we should just have a society that takes care of each other, that doesn't pollute the hell out of the planet, blah, blah, blah. I've said all that stuff many times. But logistically, how do you get this money to the right people? And when I say the right people, descendants of slaves. Like I said, there are around 40 million black people in the United States. Not all of them are descendants of slaves. I would say the majority of them are. But like at my school, there are a bunch of kids that were born in Africa. Their parents were born in Africa. And many of them actually come from pretty good means. That's how they got here. They have businesses in Africa, or their parents had businesses in Africa, and they came here and got educated and got good jobs, and they just decided to stay here. I mean, that's a thing that happens and exists. So do they need money? Not really. But would they maybe want to lay claim to it once they saw their distant, let's call them cousins, great cousins or whatever, that were owned by white people a couple hundred years ago, and as I said before, built this country for free? Yeah, I mean, how do we work that out? What's the amount? What's the distribution like? So that's why I think education would be easier. I also put out the argument that, hell, you saw what the All Lives Matter folk were about. Once Black Lives Matter started and then All Lives Matter reacted to that, they reacted to that just because black people don't want to get shot by the police. Imagine how they'd feel if their money started getting redistributed. That was hard for me to say. But so imagine that backlash. You think there was backlash just because they asked the cops to treat them decently. Imagine the backlash if money, large amounts of money, were being given out. Having said that, most of the people of color, especially black people, did say, I'd rather have the money, thank you very much. I also would argue that, and this is from a Chris Rock joke, so it's not a racist sentiment. It is a cultural sentiment. I think a lot of people would agree that sometimes black folks might not be as good with the money once they get it. Now, that's not all. I know most of my friends, in fact, all of my friends are extremely responsible with their funds because I surround myself with good people. Anyone that wasn't good with their money or was just a dipshit in general, I learned not to be friends with them. And, I've always said this. I'd rather be like the guy swabbing the bottom deck on the wonderful ship, the amazing ship, or rather than be the captain of the idiots. And those are two things that are about the same. So yeah, I'm not going to be the captain of the idiots. I'll be swabbing the deck, but I'm going to surround myself with the brilliant people who are on the wonderful ship. But culturally, Chris Rock did a joke about it. He said, when a white guy's rich, he's just rich forever. When a black guy's rich, it's called count down until he's poor again. And there's something to be said about that. It sounds a lot better when Chris Rock says it than when I say it, but there is something to be said that there's a cultural disconnect from money and wealth. And that makes sense because many black people in this country have never seen wealth and don't know what to do with it and don't know how to invest it or where to invest it. And so that's a real thing. Final note on this is also, who else can lay claim to this money? Once black folks get it, I'm sure Native Americans would lay a claim, would they not? Not that there's a ton of Native Americans left because we killed them all, but they would say, hey, this was our land first. We were here before any of y'all were here. Where's our rights? We'd like to charge rent for this however many million square miles. we had first. And, we'll just take some back rent on that. That'd be great. That'd be fair. So there's a lot of thoughts on that. I hope you maybe it helped you think about the subject more, because I find it very interesting and not an easy one to answer. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. See you. Bye.